No Time to Die is a very fitting ending to Daniel Craig's journey as James Bond. If you want to hear my detailed thoughts, stay tuned until after the intro. Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. Now I'm really sorry, typically at this time in the month I would have a drone video for you, but I will be honest, my autumn is a bit hectic with it starting. My daughter is now in the kindergarten. I had to do the introduction with her. Then I've had not only my return to work after being on parental leave, but I've also restarted my taekwondo club. After COVID, we are now trying to rebuild the whole thing. So it's a rather stressful time, I must admit. Unfortunately, this meant I didn't really find the time to go out and fly with the drone. I highly apologise if you are someone who is here just for the drone videos. They will return as soon as I'm able to. I'm trying to figure out when I'll be able to do that. But time, unfortunately, now is really hard to come by. But I will do my best to get back to them as soon as possible. So thank you for your patience, and I hope instead you enjoy this film review. I am talking about finally the James Bond film, which we've been waiting for about a year and a half, I believe. It was pushed back due to the pandemic. It's finally out, and I must say that I was very pleased with the result. Now, full disclosure, I have seen the previous 4 Bond films all the way up to including Spectre, but that one in particular to me is the worst in the whole franchise. I saw Spectre in the cinemas in 2015, and that's the only time I have seen it. It left me very underwhelmed, I will say. It was a very strange film with, I feel that they really didn't use Christoph Waltz very well in it, and yeah, so I was a bit skeptical about what this film would be like, but just a small heads up, it is far better than Spectre was, in my opinion. But it must be said that it does continue the story a bit from Spectre, so it is actually very important that you see it. I was a bit confused at the start, I will say, because I obviously couldn't remember the plot that well. So if you are watching this before watching No Time to Die, I would highly recommend that you watch Spectre, or ideally all 4 films, because I mean we do have an ongoing story in that way. There's a through line through all the films. Now generally I will also admit that I am not really a Bond guy. I never was. I never had a big interest in the films. I might have played a game or two, but the films never really did much for me until Daniel Craig came along. I'll be honest, I really like this take on James Bond. I find it really interesting. I think that he is a very compelling character, because he's not just this perfect special agent who always gets it right and that. So I feel that they have done a great job just throughout the whole 5 films with this story. Now, what is it about? I don't feel you really need to say much about the plot of a Bond film, because in that way they are kind of predictable. There's a certain expected, I don't know, progression of the story that you do really want to see in these films. So of course you have a villain, of course you have action scenes, and Bond is trying to figure out some kind of plot that is happening in the world. If you need a few more specifics than that, I can tell you that this film deals with a virus that is being weaponized, and Bond is trying to find out who's doing it and how it works, because it's not quite clear at the start how it even works. So we've got that, he's trying to do that, and at the same time we're continuing on with the story of Spectre, where he is together with Madeleine, who is played by Léa Seydoux, and we pick off more or less, actually, I believe, where Spectre ended. So we've got the 2 of them going on a journey in a car. You have Christoph Waltz. He reappears because Blofeld in the last film in Spectre, he was taken prisoner, of course. He reappears here, and we have Rami Malek as the big villain. He was obviously teased in all the trailers, of course, and yeah, his motivations, etc., I won't disclose any of that. That is basically it. That was all I'll tell you about the plot. Like I say, you kind of expect where it's going. You've got intrigues, you've got locations, traveling throughout the world. Like I say, you've got action scenes, all these things. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Now, regarding how the film was made, one interesting thing I felt was that the story, it's a very fitting conclusion. I feel, again, I won't spoil how it ends, but overall, just considering the story of the 5 films, I thought it was a great ending. It was a bit unexpected, I will admit. It caught me a bit by surprise. But generally speaking, I really enjoyed that, and the story itself in this film is fine. It feels like a very, very typical classical Bond story in that way. Not too many surprises, but generally I feel that's how you go into these films anyway. It's more about how it's done and what the characters are doing, I feel, than really being bombarded with surprises at every turn, every corner. Now, talking about how the film itself was done, it's quite a long film, so it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. It doesn't really feel like it, so I feel that the pacing is fine, it's really good. I was a bit dreading it at first, I'll admit. I thought, oh, this is probably going to be a bit of a bore at times, but I felt it was fine. We've got many characters to interact with, so at MI6 and villains, etc. So yeah, it is, I feel it's an appropriate length of time just to get through this story. And one thing that really fascinated me was the camera work with it. So the director for this film is Cary Joji Fukunaga. Never heard of him. Interestingly, when I looked up all my details on Wikipedia, he doesn't even have a clickable link. So I'm not quite sure whether this is his first feature film, but it's rather unusual for a director not to even have his own entry on Wikipedia. But I will say that I found the direction really excellently done in this film, because you have many situations, particularly in the third act, where you have the big villain base, as expected. But there were many shots there that I found were really creative, and they do a lot with shadows, and you have a lot of dark rooms with just one light source, and the camera is always placed in an interesting way to build up the tension, but just generally to make the pictures look really amazing and nice. So I really like that. Here's Struan from the editing room. I forgot to mention here at this point that this film, for some reason, has got really saturated colours, very, very saturated. So it's something that really struck me in the cinema. It gave the film this sort of like dream-like fantasy quality, which I thought was kind of fitting for the swan song of James Bond. But yes, so visually we had very, very strong colours throughout the film. I also really enjoyed the close-ups. We have a lot of close-ups, even while we're following the action. We've got a lot of close-ups of characters, but it is somehow not really oppressive, so I didn't feel like they're in my face, so it was just the perfect distance to keep you really invested and close to the characters, but without it feeling like too much. Also, the action, the camera follows the action really well, so obviously you've got gunfights and hand-to-hand combat, but done in a great way, so there are not many cuts in the editing department to cover up any kind of bad fighting, I'll call it. But also we can really follow the action very easily, so I enjoyed that a lot. That being said, this Bond film, isn't quite as action heavy as others are. So if you're going in expecting the huge stunt scenes, etc., there aren't as many in this film compared to others, but I thought it was fine. It really fits the story. It's more of a personal thing. As you can imagine, we're saying goodbye to Daniel Craig as Bond, so it makes sense that they go for a more character-driven piece. But there are enough action sets, so don't worry if that's your thing. Last interjection from the editing room. One thing, this is how I imagine Fast and the Furious films must be like, because I really enjoyed all the car scenes that they had, all the action with the cars and chases, etc. So if that's your kind of thing, you will certainly enjoy it in this film too. One thing I do want to talk about are the actors. Now you have a big cast, of course. Daniel Craig as James Bond, like I say, I enjoy him. He is the first Bond I actually care about, because you can, well, obviously he's got these gruff moments where he needs to be cool and everything, but you can see there's a lot more going on beneath the surface, and he has some great moments in this film as well, and Daniel Craig is obviously a great actor. Now, I already briefly mentioned Léa Seydoux. I enjoy her as an actress. I feel she's got this element to her. You're not always quite sure of what she's going to do. She's got this look in her eyes that really sort of captivates you. I really know her rather well and enjoyed her in the game Death Stranding. If you've played that, I highly recommend it. Very unusual game. It's also more of a sort of story-driven thing, I will say, and just beautiful environments. But I really enjoyed her in that game, and in this film as well. She gives a great performance. She plays very well off of Daniel Craig and the relationship they two have and build. It is really quite enjoyable, I feel. Now, you've got many other characters. I won't name every single one. The standout I feel that I should mention, because there was also a lot of media attention, is Lashana Lynch. She comes in, and it is also in the film, it's no big secret, James Bond is believed to be dead, which happens in pretty much every film or every other film anyway. So at some point they can't find him, can't contact him, so like, yeah, he's dead. And it just makes sense that you would get in a replacement. And so she is his replacement. She is the new 007, and obviously there's there's also stuff to the plot about that, as in how the two of them handle each other, you know, and how they get along. And I must say, I felt that was done very well too. So it's not like she comes in and she does everything better than he does, etc. So they do work together reluctantly at the start. It gets a bit better over time, but I enjoyed her character because, yeah, it was I felt it was a fresh take, because usually, again, if you'd have them inserting somebody like this into the story, it would be to one-up Bond, or I mean James Bond in this case, to just, yeah, to show that they're a lot better, the new generation is better, etc. and all this. But no, I felt that they were both fairly treated in this sort of competition, if you want to call it that. Now, Ana de Armas pops up in this film as well, which I thought was great because I enjoyed her and Daniel Craig in Knives Out, which I've also reviewed for the channel, so it was great to see her pop up again. And she has that same sort of quirky nature as she did in Knives Out, and it works really well. It is a bit strange though, obviously, seeing them with two other characters here, but I really enjoyed her time in this film too. She doesn't have a big role, but it was great. She gets some great action scenes as well, so it's interesting to see her in something like that. I haven't seen her before, but she handled herself quite well, I will say. And the last one I would mention is Ralph Fiennes. He plays M. He's the new head of MI6, and he's obviously been there for a few films too. But I really enjoy the relationship between him and Bond, because they have a sort of, well, not really exactly love-hate relationship, but it's a bit difficult at times, as you can imagine, with the hierarchy and taking orders, and Bond not always doing what he's supposed to do. But I really enjoyed their moments in this film, because I feel that it's great also seeing it throughout, you know, a few films that they build up a relationship. I felt it was handled really well too. Rami Malek plays the villain. His name is Lucifer Safran, so not quite Lucifer, but kind of a variation on that name. And his acting performance is great. We are used to seeing him in great performances. The only thing I felt was a bit of a disappointment is his villain, not quite as much as Blofeld, so as Christoph Waltz in Spectre, but nearly as much as a bit one-dimensional. So his motivations and that, they are explained, but it's like, okay, you know, Bond villain. That trope exists for a reason. But I wish there could have been a bit more, but he at least was very enjoyable in the role. Okay, so overall, like I say, a very fitting end for Daniel Craig. I highly recommend seeing it, but watch Spectre first just to freshen up the story plot so you're aware of that. And yes, it's a shame that we won't see more of them, but I guess it had to end at some point. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the series now from this point onwards. I'll thank you for watching this video. Leave a comment down below if you're a Bond head, if you've seen the films, what you thought of them, of course what you thought in particular about this one. How does it hold up to previous Bond things? Is there a Bond film that you might recommend that I might enjoy? You know, like I say, I'm not really a big fan of the classics, but there might be one or two, I suppose. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe. It's the best way to support this channel. I would appreciate it very much, and I will see you in the next video on Flying Wiener. Take care.